Okay, so loops iterate through a list of some kind, right? So a common pattern in JavaScript is to build a list or a collection of something and then do something with each item in the list, right? Kind of like what we were talking about with jQuery, right? Find something, do something. With DOM scripting, what you have to do is you have to loop through it yourself. CSS uses implicit iteration. It loops through for you, right? If you just say like dot my class and then you give it like a background color, it'll loop through all of the elements that have a class of my class, and it'll apply that background color to them, right? So it does this implicit iteration, and it works on it as a live list. So if new things are added, they also get the background color. Right. There you go. All divs now get the text color red. OK, JavaScript relies on explicit iteration, so it has to explicitly loop through each div, right? So jQuery allows for both. You can iterate through explicitly. You can use one of jQuery's methods, or you can convert your collection of elements that you build up when you find something, right? You can convert those to like an array and use a native JavaScript looping structure. But jQuery will do the looping for you. It does, like when you say div dot, div in parens, whatever with the dollar, dot add class, right? It will, that add class method inside the jQuery core file, it will go through and it'll say, OK, all of these divs, I'm going to go through, and for each one of these, I'm going to add the class. OK, it's nice. Two most common loops are for loops for general purpose iteration. You use them with arrays or array-like objects like DOM lists or DOM node lists, or for-in loops, which are used with arrays or objects, but don't use them with arrays, just use them with objects. OK, use a for-in loop. We'll see an example of each. While loops and do while loops are the other two looping structures. OK, for loop, 3 statements and a code block, right? So this is what you get. The first statement is the initial value, what you're going to start with. The second one is the condition that you're testing it against. OK, so I'm going to keep doing the same thing as long as this condition is met. And the third thing is your incrementer. OK, so like what you're going to do each time. And typically, you're going to increment the value, because in for loops, you're using numbers, right? You're going to be looping through an array, and you're going to be starting with what number in JavaScript? What do you start with if you're looping through? What was that? Sorry.
0.
I just talked right over you. Yeah, 0, right, yeah. OK, so you start with 0, and then you apply this condition, and then you increment that, and for each one of those things, you do something within that block. So it looks something like this. For var I equals 0, I is less than 3. Typically, you wouldn't have like a hard-coded number there. For 3, you would have something like a variable. You'd have like the length of the array, right? And then I++, just adds 1 to the number. So that I there, it doesn't have to be I. It can be anything you want it to be. I is just a convention. It's just a one-letter variable name. Okay? You don't have to var it here. You can var it outside of this of the parens there. But you shouldn't just say for I equals 0 without varring that I, right? Because then I becomes this global variable that somewhere else can, like if you're doing a few loops like this, like they can mess with each other. They can mess with each other's heads, like it'll change the number and it could be weird. It could start with the number 23 if another loop has gone through. Well, no, it wouldn't. It would start with 0, but still, you get the point. Like if it's if it's looking for if you're looking for I at some point, in any case, here's a common use case for this. We're going to get all of the divs, right? All the elements by tag name, we're going to get all the divs. We're going to loop through them, and we're going to change the color. We're going to, on the style property of those divs, right? And so, yeah, pretty straightforward, right? Divs.length, that's the, this divs variable here, this is not a true array. It's a node list. It's a live node list. Okay, it'll update if you add divs. But in any case, yeah, there, yeah.
So if a div is removed, does the length update while you're in the loop? If it's a live list?
Yes. Yeah.
What if you,
Which is a problem. Which can be a problem. Yep. Because then you could only apply it to, like all but the last one, right? So yeah, because here we're checking it against the length each time, and it's also depending on the length of the array. It can also be wasteful, right? Like sometimes you don't need to check the length every single time, right? Sometimes it's better to store the length in a variable first, right? So now I'm guaranteed to go through all of the divs that are there when I start. Yes?
Another way you can do that if you don't want to have a div count variable floating around is you can, right after where you're declaring var I, you can just put in like another, I think you could put in another like var L and then make like the thing called the length, and you get the length there, and you can use I as greater than L or whatever.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm so glad you just explained the next slide.
Oh, yeah. I was looking right at it, and I was like, wait a second.
Yeah, I did that on purpose. No, but that's awesome. You're absolutely right. So here notice here I'm using a comma to separate those two variables, right? If you separate two statements like that with a comma, it's applying that var to the second one as well. Okay, it's declaring the second one too. It's not just setting it. You can't put a semicolon. You only get two semicolons here, right? But yeah, you can do it. You can do it right in here. It's still going to be within the same scope, but it's more compact, I guess. Yeah, because for statements are not functions. This is not JavaScript variables are lexically scoped. They're scoped to within a function. So it really is 6 of one, half dozen the other, right? But it's nice. Okay. For in loops, same kind of thing. So you can say for var person in family, if I have an object, a family object, so each time I go through here, for each element in that object, right, person will be the key, and family person will be the value, right? Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. While and do while. I don't use these very much, but they can be handy. They don't do the iteration for you, so you have to do them within the code block. Okay. So you would have to do the plus plus. Or you could start with for and work backwards and say like while I is greater than 0, start with var I equals 4 or whatever. and then do I minus minus. So, all right.